when I was growing up, I was always taught 3 times for emphasis. You know, you have to say something 3 times so that people understand what it is you mean, that you make your point. And one of the points that I wanted to come back to again is gender equality, especially within the framework that we at Benefactum look at it. And the reason why I wanted to kind of come back to it is because, you know, a lot of people still hear gender equality and think, oh, this is diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it's not. And I don't know when I said this or posted this, but I spoke about gender equality being impact. And that's what we firmly believe. It is impact. It isn't just diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the reason being is and this goes back to this sustainable approach, when you look to make a change, you have to look at what's going to happen in the opposite direction. Namely, you start to help women. Who's going to be potentially upset by it? You start to help Black women. Who's potentially going to be upset by that? And I think this is why we have to look at it in a very broad sense, meaning when you look at gender equality, you're still looking at the whole company's culture. You can't just change something and make it better for one group without believing that it won't have any sort of other knock-on effect. And that's why we have to kind of look broader than trainings, and we have to look at how do we deal with or analyze our processes and procedures. How do we deal with groups that feel displaced? How do we really take a litmus test of our culture, A, in a way that's honest, B, in a way that we know what to do with the results, but C, in a way that's going to make long-term intrinsic changes to our culture? Because everything works, everything's interconnected. And I think we have to accept this reality that, as we're seeing, to be fair, in the current newspapers, in the Great Resignation and all these things, we're starting to see that, truthfully, not everybody is on board with making these changes. So how do we move forward whilst acknowledging that not everybody's on board? How do we take care of negative, destructive forces that don't want to do this, especially when it's wrapped up in the rhetoric of being unfair? And this is why gender equality is so much more than just diversity, equity, inclusion, because we have to look at the whole company from top to bottom, every single part that will be affected by this change. What do they say? For every action there's a reaction, right? And that's what we have to, that's what we look at. We look at each action, but what will be the reactions? How does this flow down? You know, you think about, we talked about this before, you think about when people say, it's not flowing through to middle management. That's a choice. Middle management is not anonymous. So you have to think about the impact you're making and how you're going to create something better for one particular group, but it might be perceived by others as disadvantaging them. And that is the difficulty, but at the same time, it shouldn't be an excuse not to do anything. I think I saw it yesterday. When society fails women, society fails everyone. I think that's what it was. But this is also the point. It's also about when we help women, when we help Black women, we aren't just helping that one group or two groups. We're helping everybody. And this is really the underscoring point, is that when you look at how, when you help one person, what the ripple effect is, how many more people will be helped, what it does in terms of financially, educationally, all these other things, access to health, all these things that change from one person affecting one generation in a family and changing the outcome, right? That's the impact. It's the ability to change society. And we have to stop looking at it purely as the ability to change. It's not just changing corporate culture, it's also changing society. Because cultures are only ultimately made up of people. And people show what they believe through their behaviors. The question is, how much longer will that last? That these kinds of bad behaviors are still accepted? And I think that's a question. And when I say bad behaviors, they're not always obvious, but there are still some that are becoming more and more obvious as we come closer and closer to the crucial points of change. So, thank you for listening as always, and have a good day. Bye-bye.